Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to introduce to you now. Dr. Carolyn Dean is the author of over 50 books, including the bestseller, The Magnesium Miracle, and other noted publications, including IBS for Dummies, Hormone Balance, Death by Modern Medicine, and over 110 Kindle books to date. Dr. Dean is committed to helping anyone understand more about nutrients, their requirements in the body, and ways to promote health and vitality in a proactive manner. In 2015, Dr. Dean launched the RnA ReSet brand, based on nutrient protocols she built through over 40 years of experience in private healthcare practice. Dr. Dean's career as a medical doctor and naturopath resulted in a collection of unique proprietary formulations that support precise applications while remaining safe for everyday use. Dr. Dean continues to provide her leadership and vision for enabling people to take control of their own health. This includes her 45 years of educational resources, including guidebooks, presentations, and a history of other audio, video, and written assets, for anyone wanting to learn more about nutrients and their health. Dr. Carolyn Dean, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you to Boundless Body Radio.
Thank you, Casey. Great to be here.
It's great to host you. I'm so glad you're sitting on the ground the way that I do. You're matching me. I absolutely love it. I do have a question. That's great. I have a question about your Zoom background. That's not real, is it? I see some like palm trees and everything. That's a fake Zoom background there.
No, the palm trees are swaying in the wind. It's real. It's amazing.
Okay, so that's where I was a little bit confused. We've had this scheduled for a few weeks. You had plenty of time to fly me out to Maui. You could have hosted me for a few weeks there. Like, I don't know where the disconnect was.
No, yeah, and I even have a farm that I support. So I could have put you up on the farm. You could have been working with the El Salvadorians, digging up the turmeric.
Oh, there you go. Wow. Well, next time we'll have to definitely do that. You are absolutely thriving and look fantastic at over 70 years of age. Your content is prolific. To this day, you're putting out so much content that's really, really helpful. And I'm really excited to deep dive into this topic with you. It was a few weeks ago, I was at my local grocery store and I saw this really nice couple, and I could tell they were like looking at different supplements, and they were looking for a magnesium supplement in particular. And, I've spent, over 15 years in personal training, and a good part of that was selling supplements and making commission on it. And so I stepped in. I'm like, hey guys, maybe I can answer some questions. They said, yeah, we're wondering if this is the right type of magnesium for what we're looking for. And I said, I know enough about magnesium to know that I don't know that question. There's like 50 different kinds of magnesium. And so I knew that I wanted to get a magnesium expert on to our show. And it was hard to find somebody who doesn't sell their own magnesium, which you do, in fairness. And it's for the reason that, you couldn't find what you were looking for out there. And I just want to say, like, we landed on you because you do such a great job of educating your clients and your people through podcasts and everything. And I know this would be a really unbiased and balanced talk about magnesium. And we're just so grateful for all of your work and grateful to host you here today.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, it's an incredible topic. And I've been through all the different ramifications of magnesium because when I was in New York doing an AIDS, chronic fatigue, alternate therapy research study in the early 90s, for Pete's sakes, I started to go on local TV. I was on The View a lot until they started doing drug advertising. And a book publisher asked me to publish some little health books. And then Random House said they wanted me to write a book on magnesium. And I thought, that's crazy, 300 pages on one mineral. But when I started doing the research, I found out that magnesium is responsible for your muscles and nerves working properly. If you don't have enough magnesium, your muscles will tighten up. So anything you can think of, an eye tick, Charlie horse leg cramps, restless legs, your heart going into any sort of spasm, which can cause a heart rhythm problem, headaches, muscle tension, gramophone thoughts, your mind just won't shut down, anxiety. I mean, I've gotten about 65 different major symptoms of magnesium deficiency, all of which are then treated with drugs. And come to find out, with all these symptoms, I had the headaches and the poor sleep, insomnia, muscle tension. I thought I had fibromyalgia. Not chronic fatigue, though. It never interrupted my energy. I think I kept my adrenals pumped up, but that will use up more of my magnesium. So when I went to take magnesium for my symptoms, because I knew, okay, this is the answer, it gave me the laxative effect. And it's like, then you stop. It's like you hear from some people, well, if you get the laxative effect, that means you're saturated. And there's no way I was saturated on 10 milligrams of magnesium. So yeah, I wrote the book, and then I spent the next 10 years trying to find a magnesium or a mineral company that would research and make a non-laxative magnesium. Because by that time I was finding out that, wow, 80% of known metabolic functions require magnesium. 80%. I mean, that's huge. And so what I realized is we know that about the symptoms of magnesium deficiency. We take it, we get supposedly saturated, we get the laxative effect, and then we keep going. We turn away from magnesium and look for other solutions to these magnesium deficiency problems. So after 10 years, I finally found a chemist, and he had a process that he was using on something else. So he concentrated magnesium chloride and stabilized the ions of magnesium, kind of separated the magnesium from the chloride. And in this stable form, when you shoot a laser that senses particles, when you shoot a laser through a bottle of this picometer sized magnesium, nothing shows up. So it means it's, you can't say subatomic, because it's like ions or atoms of magnesium, and they just go right into the cells. Boom. From not being able to take, 10 to 50 milligrams of magnesium to help myself, and to get some relief, I was soaking in Epsom salts baths all day. So compared to 10 to 50, given the laxative effect, I was able to take 1,200 milligrams of magnesium. For a year and a half, I began to feel better really quickly, but for a year and a half, I went to completely depleted to totally saturated, to the point where I could take a couple days off my magnesium and not get my symptoms back.
Wow.
But magnesium, it's water soluble, it goes in, it goes out, you have to keep replacing it. The stress we're under will use up magnesium. The plants don't have magnesium anymore. When I moved here to Maui, I immediately got involved with a biodynamic organic farm that I now support. And I tried for the umpteenth time to be a vegetarian, that didn't, and go on, a diet from the farm. And I couldn't do it. Heart palpitations came back right away, leg cramps. And so I realized, this business about we can get it all from our diet, I really seriously believe that ship has sailed. And it may be that we can amend the soil and get enough nutrients, but nobody really has the science standardized enough to tell people what they should put in the soil. There's rock dust, and there's, composting, there's this and that. You can put Epsom salts on the soil, but we really don't have enough science behind making the soil perfect enough. And the soil has to be alive as well. We have to have a probiotic soil. So I just, from my own experience, I realized I had to go the nutrient way. And around that same time, I was traveling in Europe doing the Codex Alimentarius meetings. Do you know about Codex Alimentarius?
No.
It started in Germany with the World Trade Organization, the World Health Organization, and they were standardizing food and dietary supplements for shipping across country borders. Now this was, oh, we got to, we want everything to be safe and everything. And when I went to the meetings, what we were hearing is we don't want dietary supplements to interfere with drugs. So we want low potency supplements in synthetic form so that they won't make people feel better and so people won't stop their drugs. I mean, they didn't say all those words. In terms of food standardization, they wanted to allow as much toxic material and heavy metals in the food as possible to appease the manufacturers. So, you'd have countries standing up and saying, well, um, you're allowing all these toxins in bottled milk, and why aren't you supporting breast milk? And these people were embarrassed and humiliated about their questions about trying to maintain a good diet and nutrients for the body. I mean, it was horrendous. So I realized right then, and I wasn't in the business of a supplement company at that time. This was 2004, 2005. And I thought, man, if I ever had a supplement company, I'd go low dose, food based, well absorbed, all that. And that's what I finally had to do in 2014. But I learned that lesson that this Codex Alimentarius, we short form it Codex, they created laws around the world that Canada succumbed to, Australia, and the UK, where you cannot get high potency nutrients like you used to. And they're trying to do that in America now.
Wow.
So that's, it's another layer that, I suppose, what is it, almost 20 years ago that this was happening. It was going on many years before I sort of joined in the fray. And, it's not even talked about. There's
That's
so
crazy.
many things that I've lived through. I mean, I was around in the time when the city I did my medicine in, Halifax, Nova Scotia, it didn't even have a health food store.
Wow.
I've been around since the first supplements began. They were food based. They couldn't be anything else. And then the chemical companies got involved and said, oh, well, this chemical structure looks just like this one. Let's just substitute this synthetic coal tar based nutrient. No one will know the difference. But you see my hands? One is a right rotating and one is a left rotating molecular compound. They aren't the same. You try to put this in a receptor site when it's looking for that. And that's why you have to force high dose nutrients when they're synthetic. I went through the years when, naturopaths mostly, I did, it was naturopaths that were interested in nutrients. I didn't know any doctors. I was the only doctor in my naturopathic class. So they would give these synthetics and, oh, well, the RDA of B vitamins is 2 and 4 and 5 milligrams, but that's not working with the synthetics. Let's use 10 milligrams. Oh, well, maybe 25. I mean, there are 100 milligram dosings of B complex on the market now, just to force the body to take it in. And
wow.
I mean, that actually can be why many of the supplement studies don't show good results, because they're using crap.
Wow. That's crazy. Yeah. And we can thank, at least here in America, we can thank my state, Utah, with Orrin Hatch as a senator, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago, that dysregulated, basically all supplements. You can put anything in a bottle and call it anything, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
DSHEA, Dietary Health Education Act. It's awesome. It saved our behinds for so many years. And Durban now is trying to stop all that.
Wow.
Yeah, the drug company, when part of what we called it the health freedom movement back in the mid 20s was lobbying Ottawa in Canada and Washington, we would sit in these senators, meeting rooms, sometimes with the senator, but usually with their top aide. And we were told point blank, well, with all the funding from drug companies and what do you call it? They paid people to
Like lobbyist?
lobby the Senate. They were told, these senators were told, if you promote dietary supplements, we will take the drug industry out of the country. And they did that anyway, but they threatened these senators with whatever so that they wouldn't promote dietary supplements. So that's why you don't see any promotion in allopathic medical field. You don't see doctors talking about supplements because they didn't learn about it in med school. But as soon as you do it, the hospital comes after them, the peers come after them. I mean, you can imagine what I went through in med school when I was bringing my homemade yogurt into class and and doing my one of my side treatments was acupuncture. So I had this apple and I practiced my acupuncture technique on this apple. So, I put up with a lot of ridicule because even in first, second year med school, these students are brainwashed.
Yeah.
They are totally brainwashed. So anyway, where were we, Casey?
Well, let's start really high level. What is magnesium and how do we use it in the body?
All right. Magnesium is a mineral. It's a very important electrolyte that keeps the heart rhythm in balance. And it's so hard to measure in the body that it isn't even on the electrolyte panel of your blood test. So what have I been saying? Magnesium is responsible for 80% of your non-metabolic functions, for making muscles and nerves work. What's your heart? One big muscle. They don't even measure your magnesium when you have any sort of heart problems. So they don't know what's going on. Magnesium, when it's depleted, will be pulled out when it's depleted in the blood. In order to keep your blood at a level to try to keep your heart in balance, magnesium will be pulled out of your muscles and your bones. So you can actually be getting muscle cramps in your legs that show you're deficient just to keep your heart muscle operating. And this business about measurement, the measurement they use for magnesium is serum magnesium. The best measurement is an ionized magnesium. It shows how many ions of magnesium are in your body, which is what I was saying, that the product I worked on is an ionized magnesium. So you're going to have decent levels if you take an ionized magnesium. So the range of the level of serum magnesium is really tiny, and it has to stay in that range. If it's really low, then people go, oh, okay, let's give them some magnesium. And I've had a ton of patients and then telephone clients and now customers say to me, wow, when I was in hospital and they gave me that IV magnesium drip, I felt great. And then when I get home, I crashed again. And then when my doctor said to take magnesium oxide, I get the laxative effect and I don't know what to do. Magnesium oxide became the magnesium of choice because some really brilliant lady owner of a magnesium oxide company, she gave a ton of free supplements to mineral researchers back in the day. So they did all their research on magnesium oxide. Wow. And magnesium oxide, as we know now, is only 4% absorbed.
Yeah.
And the rest of it is a laxative. Even at 4% absorption, all the research showed positive benefits with magnesium, probably because we were so depleted. Everyone. And sidebar, this magnesium L-threonate magnesium that is a patented drug. Drug companies probably own it. It's expensive as heck. And they did a rat study that showed that, there's 7% more absorption in the spinal cord of these rats than a magnesium citrate. So it's the only one that'll get into your brain. So
Wow.
with all that layer of lies, they make everybody feel, threonate is the best for the brain. And then there are other myths and stories about, and malate is good for the muscles, and taurate is good for the heart. Seriously, it's all about the magnesium. And in terms of the magnesium threonate itself has mental, emotional balancing effects. So what's the real effect of magnesium threonate? And when you look at the labeling, 1,000 milligrams of magnesium threonate they'll put on the front of the bottle. Oh my gosh, great, I'm getting 1,000 milligrams of magnesium. You turn it over, by the way, you have to take 2 of these pills to get 144 milligrams of elemental magnesium.
Wow.
So I would have to take 20 of those pills to get what I was getting with a teaspoon of my liquid magnesium. So the whole industry, seriously, it got totally invaded by kind of disaffected drug company people who thought, there must be a better way. I don't quite like killing so many people with these drugs. Let me try something else. So they came into the nutrient market and brought all their marketing hype and techniques and I don't mind capitalism. I have fared very well with capitalism, but they just brought so much hype into the industry that we can't see a way out. We really can't see a
Wow.
way out.
Wow. Well, I do want to talk to you about the different types of supplemental magnesium that we can take. But before we do, what about food sources? I know that plants can be a little bit difficult because we've depleted the soil and it's harder for the plants to kind of upcycle that and provide that as nutrition for us. But where are the best food sources classically of magnesium?
Well, classically, it's supposed to be deep green leafy vegetables and grains. And fish bones have mostly calcium. So grains and vegetables. What's happened in the past 10, 15 years? The keto diet. What are we supposed to avoid? Carbs. So I think that, I do pretty much the keto diet and intermittent fasting. I think it's awesome. But I think it only works for me because I take my liquid minerals, there are various of them. I take my food-based B's and C and my omegas and A, D, and E. So I think that when you go on restrictive diets, you're missing out on the nutrients. The body keeps looking for them and keeps you hungry and all the rest of it. Fat is great because the slow burn of fat keeps you feeling satisfied. But, they talk about the keto flu and the various
Yeah.
side effects or symptoms of a ketogenic diet. I think it's a nutrient deficiency. And, even when you look at the carnivore diet, the pathway of gluconeogenesis, glucose newly created, happens when you have a high protein diet. You will make your glucose out of protein. So you're never going to be without some, very important glucose. And like you've said, Casey, I've heard you in your podcast say, look, at any one time, you've only got 4 or 5 grams of sugar in your blood. That's 1 teaspoon. And
Tiny.
what are people doing with sugars? Well, let me do the sugar story real quick. You've got 10 teaspoons of sugar in the non-sugar-free diet. Non-sugar-free sodas diet has a worse thing with the aspartame that breaks down into wood alcohol. My the board that came after me, the College of Physicians and Surgeons board, they were first tipped off because I did a TV show on sugar, national TV show in Canada, and I did this around the Christmas time. I was tipping out. Oh, well, you know, there are 10 teaspoons of sugar in a can of soda. And there were kids in the audience and they'd show their faces. And there are 20 teaspoons of sugar in a milkshake. And the Sugar Institute of Canada came after me because I said bad things about sugar.
That's crazy. I don't know why.
Mm,
I don't know why I let those kinds of things surprise me anymore. It's insane.
I know. But again, look where I am. So the magnesium, you know, it's the different types of them we talked about. We talked about magnesium oxide. Where are we going now?
So yeah, so let's talk about the different types. You always see that this type malate is good for this, or citrate is good for this. Is that true, first of all, that different forms of magnesium are better for certain things, or is that kind of baloney?
It's kind of marketing strategy. Um, the malic acid in the magnesium malate, they say it was helpful for people with fibromyalgia and all the rest of it. But, you know, eat an apple for Pete's sakes. You know, what you're after is the magnesium. And what happens in the body is, you know, a compound will disassociate and come back together. So, for example, my magnesium citrate, it's disassociated all the time. So that magnesium ion is free to go into the cells and do its work. Whereas something that's not a stabilized ion, a magnesium citrate, taurate, glycinate, gluconate, it will be a compound that'll disassociate for a snap second and then bind right back up because magnesium is so reactive. So you're at any one time, you're only going to get a few, or let's say a small percentage of the magnesium ions able to be absorbed into the cell. And then when you look at, I've already talked about the 3 and 8, 1,000, well, it ends up being 2,000 milligrams is only 144 milligrams of elemental magnesium. It's the same for all the different magnesiums. There'll be a compound, there'll be 500 milligrams of the compound, and that'll be anywhere from 200 milligrams down to 75 milligrams of the magnesium component that you really want. So whatever's attached to the magnesium, yeah, okay, it can be doing something. But what you're really looking for is what magnesium will do to 80% of known metabolic functions. So, and you know, the studies about magnesium oxide showing that something that's 4% absorbed can be useful. I just always said to people, it's what you absorb. It's not what you swallow or what's on the label. It's what gets absorbed in the cells. And, you know, how many of your guests talk about cellular health and cellular oxidation? In the cells, you know, you've got your Krebs cycle that makes the ATP energy. In the Krebs cycle, there are 8 steps. 4 to 6 of those steps require magnesium. And whoever talked about that, you know, it's usually people who they'll pay lip service to magnesium, but then they'll say, I don't want to get the laxative effect. So they never stop to, well, which is what I had to do for my personal health. They never stop to say, well, how can I make it less laxative? And there were people that said, okay, the Epsom salts baths. And then there was the magnesium chloride oil. You know, we would super saturate magnesium chloride in distilled water and then put that all over ourselves. You know, I had these huge body rashes from you know, the irritation from all that stuff.
Wow.
So we were trying really hard to find alternatives. And, you know, I was just very fortunate to create something that you can take by mouth that will help to saturate the whole body.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I was actually going to ask you, I know we've already talked about Epsom salt baths, but topical application of magnesium. What do we know about that? Can that be useful for some people? I've heard that for like restless legs at night, that's a really good solution. What would you say about that?
Absolutely. It's absorbed really, really well. I have this story in my Magnesium Miracle book about a woman who, put in a few pounds of Epsom salt into her bath and lay down and maybe nodded off for a little bit, but she had to get up really fast because she had to go to the bathroom. She got the laxative effect from absorbing so much magnesium. I thought that was pretty cool.
Wow. Okay, so we've been calling it laxative effect, and that's about the most mild term we can describe. If you have ever taken magnesium supplements or know people who do, you know it's a little bit more severe than a laxative effect. I've heard some pretty amazing and sometimes
Mhm.
not so great stories.
Well, Casey, if you've ever had a colonoscopy, you know that they give you like an Epsom salt drink to flush you out.
Wow.
And that's
I didn't
why,
know that.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah, I am magnesium sulfate. I think they've gone to a petroleum product since then, but that was your go-to laxative, and that's why maybe medical doctors don't get involved with giving people magnesium because they know it's a laxative they use for colonoscopies. They know it's not on the electrolyte panel. They talk down patients who say, well, magnesium really helps me. They'll create this altercation and they never see that patient again, so they never learn.
Wow.
It's
Wow.
it's terrible.
That is
People
terrible.
who, yeah, patients, not well, yeah, patients, but now customers will tell us that, well, they tell their doctor they took my magnesium for their atrial fibrillation, and they will get screamed at that, that's no way to treat it. You have to take these drugs for life. You're never going to get over it. And here's your prescription for another cardiac ablation surgery for your atrial fibrillation. It could be magnesium deficiency, but the FDA won't let me say that.
Wow. Wow. So interesting. Besides food, I did want to also ask you about water. One thing that occurs to me is most of our drinking water through our evolution was probably spring water, which means it was coming up from the earth. It was being
Mhm.
filtered by all kinds of rocks and minerals. We have one not too far away from us. It's about 20 miles away, where it literally takes the water like 10,000 years to go just a few miles before it comes out into a spigot into a city park. And anytime I'm in that area, I try to fill up as many bottles as I can because it's absolutely wonderful. This water is alive and vibrant, and it's like the mouthfeel is almost like more viscous. It's really thick and delicious. And I believe a lot of that is coming from the mineral content, but we don't drink our water like that very often anymore. Can doing things like either supplementing our water or drinking certain types of waters, like I wonder about like Gerolsteiner or San Pellegrino or like Topo Chico, is that an additional way that we can get more minerals through our water, or is that just not sufficient?
I don't think it's sufficient. There are mineral springs that are high in magnesium, but that can be costly, especially the shipping. I tell people to put sea salt in their water, a good sea salt that has some color to it, so you know it hasn't been refined. And my water hydration guideline is you take your body weight, divide that in half, and take and drink that many ounces of water. So 100 pounds, 50 ounces, and in each liter of water, put a quarter teaspoon of a good sea salt.
Hmm.
And you don't start off that way. You start with a pinch and slowly increase it. You get to the point where when you drink plain water, it tastes, bland and blah. The salt is, most of it will dissolve. There are upwards of 72 minerals in a good sea salt. And these are minerals that haven't been tested. We know only a certain amount of about a dozen or so minerals. I mean, what are all these other minerals doing? So the sea salt, good hydration, and then, obviously, I personally have to take my own Remag. And here's another thing, Casey, is I talked about taking 1,200 milligrams for that year and a half.
Yeah.
Well, now I only need 300 to 450 milligrams.
Yeah.
You
You've
know,
caught
it's
yourself back up and now it's more like a
exactly.
maintenance.
It's
Yeah.
not like a drug where you have to take more and more and more to get the same effect. You are just, giving your body its building blocks. I mean, that's another phrase I use all the time is if you give the body the building blocks it needs to detoxify. So what's that? That's your magnesium, your methylated B vitamins for your methyl detoxification pathways in your liver. It's some sulfur-based amino acids for your sulfation detoxification pathways. The eggs that you love are, that's your sulfur. I mean, that is so important. On our farm, Casey, we have 800 chickens.
What? That's amazing.
800 chickens. So we're totally inundated with eggs. So I've got some freeze dryers, uh, two at the farm and one down here. So we're going to freeze dry eggs and see what happens with them.
That's amazing. I love that. I can't wait to hear about that. That's
Yeah,
fantastic. You
yeah.
talked about the salt. I will have to give a shout out to two local companies around here. We're lucky enough to have Redmond Real Salt. They're just,
Yeah.
2 or 3 hours down the road, and that's an ancient sea bed. So it is still sea salt. It has that wonderful color to it. It just hasn't been like adulterated from our polluted ocean. So that's one that I use
Mhm.
quite a bit. And then really
Yeah.
just right down the road, like about 5 miles away, we have Keto Chow, and they make a solution, a really salty solution called electrolyte drops and fasting drops. And I'll just take the bottle and tip it and get some of that
Uh-huh.
electrolyte. Some of it, at least, is taken from the Great Salt Lake. And it makes this, you're right, like a really delicious water that has a much better mouthfeel. And you go back to
Mhm.
drinking filtered, like you said, and the filter just is totally what's the word? It's like flat. It doesn't like
Yeah.
hit that spot. It doesn't quench your thirst.
It's not alive. It is dead water.
That's a good way to say
And,
it.
you were talking about you know, uh, there's a certain even milkiness or thickness to spring water that comes from the mountains down through the valley to the floodplain where we were supposed to grow our food. All that is stopped. I mean, the long-lived communities in the world live, as I understand it, in the mountains, and they drink from the streams. And the streams are milky with minerals. I mean,
Yeah.
there's so much that we can just look at, whatever, ancestrally or just the observation. I mean, how many people have told you when they're in Europe and they're climbing mountains and everything, how healthy they feel? It's not just the air quality, it's the water.
Yeah.
And so what we've done is we've dammed up those streams. We've had we put housing on the floodplains. We relegate the farming to land that really has no minerals. It never started with minerals, and then we put the glyphosate, GMO stuff, all that on the soil, and we kill it. We bind up the minerals so that they don't even have a chance to get into the plant.
Wow, it's so sad. You're right. You're right about Europe. So funny. One of my clients went to France a few months ago and talked about these like there are artesian wells everywhere, and each one will have even like notes about the water and its flavor, its profile, and all that stuff. Another client just today, I ran into him. He just got back from Italy. He ate everything. They went over there, and he said he went
Uh,
way off his diet. He ate everything. They walked a ton. He didn't gain a pound. And so between the quality
uh,
of the food that they have over there versus the crap that we have here, and moving around, and I'm sure you're right, water quality must have been a huge part of that. I really do believe that. So interesting. Yeah. I do want to ask you
Well, hey, let me just interrupt, Casey, because you know this, that adult bodies are like 85-90% water, or 75-80% water. So we have to have good water, and water and minerals go together. When minerals go into cells, it pulls the water in. If you're deficient in minerals, your cells are dehydrated and they won't do their processing. I mean, say
yeah,
no
huge
more.
problem. Yeah,
Yeah.
huge problem. Wow. Well, thank you. That was really well explained. I do want to touch a little bit on the interaction between magnesium and calcium, because I think most people get really confused about this, especially when it comes to supplementation. People are told to supplement with a bunch of calcium when that may or may not be the best advice. Can you tell us a little bit about those interactions in the body between magnesium and calcium?
Yeah, there's supposed to be a ratio of calcium to magnesium. And apparently that was a misinterpretation of a French researcher who said never take more than 2 times calcium to 1 part magnesium. Never, never, never. And it was interpreted that, oh, you have to have 2 parts calcium to 1 part magnesium. And come to find out that then, we went into this calcium fortification, and women were told, I guess maybe it's going on 25 years now, to take calcium for their bones because, oh, look, this bone is mostly made up of calcium. If you take a piece of calcium carbonate, like a big piece of chalk, and drop it on the floor, it will shatter. So the bone is not just calcium, as you know. I mean, there are dozens of, well, maybe 17 different minerals and different things that are required to make bone, but the most important is magnesium. So the flexibility of bone, when kids are young, they don't break as easy. They've got a higher ratio of magnesium to the calcium. So what I know from looking at the whole calcium picture is aging is partly related to calcification. When we look at a lack of magnesium, it means calcium is not soluble in the blood, and it is not directed to the bones and teeth. Magnesium will solubilize the calcium in the blood and bring it to where it's supposed to be. If calcium is not solubilized, it will start precipitating in joints, heel spurs, gallstones, kidney stones, just aches and pains throughout the whole body with calcifications. So we even, like the carotid arteries, they'll
Yeah.
calcify. The heart arteries, for Pete's sakes, will calcify. And then what do? We go in with roto-rooters and try to scrape off the calcium. Now, the calcium, when it deposits in arteries, it's usually as a band-aid along with cholesterol for some sort of damage of the walls, of the lining of the artery. Now, what's damaging those walls and arteries is probably a lack of good fats.
Yeah.
The PUFAs, you were talking about canola oil in one of your podcasts, and canola oil is the original GMO. It's not just a horrible rapeseed. That's what it's called, rapeseed. So they had to change that name. But it's genetically engineered, and it's just and being an omega-6 fatty acid, which is pro-inflammatory, it just throws everything off balance. I mean, I had this experience just 2 months ago where I got kind of addicted to cauliflower bites. So it's I thought it was air fried, kind of dehydrated and air fried cauliflower because it's nice and crunchy. I finally looked at the package because my joints were feeling weird. I said, "What am I eating?" And it was all omega-6 oil.
Ugh,
Oh, it is sunflower and safflower and maybe canola. And
terrible.
as soon as I stopped eating it, my joints were better.
Wow.
So yeah, we have to keep reading labels. The health food stores have become such a marketing enterprise because they will put, they'll put keto on everything, for example. And
Exactly.
then you look and it's the sugar free. So what does it have? It's got erythritol. It's got alcohol sugars or sugar alcohol. And some people react to them. I mean, xylitol, some people get the laxative effect with xylitol. And the marketing of I can't believe how fast keto caught on, but it was because of the marketing behind it.
Yep. Yeah, totally. Yeah,
Mhm.
you see products from all kinds of companies, and you're right. You look at the ingredients, and it's a train wreck. It's like, just go eat some eggs, for heaven's sakes. Like, go to your farm. You've got 800 chickens. No shortage of eggs there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Okay, so I do want to go back to the list of the 65 conditions that you mentioned. And oh my goodness, like, reading through it in your book, it's like pages and pages and pages. Like, holy smokes. So this is the condition. You do a great job writing about, what the mechanisms are, so it's easy to understand, which I really love. So what are some of the more common ones that people can relate to, that will be easy signs for them to know that they are deficient in magnesium? And then I'd also love to ask you, what are some of the really surprising ones that you learned about later on? Maybe they're not as common, but are still related to magnesium in ways that would surprise people.
Yeah, good question. I think the common ones are leg cramps, the Charlie horse leg cramps. I mean, seriously, you'll be in bed and you'll stretch out your legs, you'll point your toes, and then you can the pain is just incredible. I used to get those. What you have to do is either you know, s- um, what is it? Flex extend, flex your feet back so it looks like you're standing up, or roll out of bed as quick as you can and stand up, and then it's gone. So
Mm.
it's a muscle spasm. Those are horrible, and those are magnesium deficiency. Restless legs is can be magnesium deficiency, but I think potassium can also be involved. You know, it's um, it's sort of a tingly feeling in the legs. I've never had it. So the nerves are involved. Maybe it just needs more magnesium than people have been taking. So muscles, twitching, the heart palpitations is huge. I mean, can you imagine you're there, which is what I went through. Um, your heart's beating and then it'll thump and it'll catch your breath.
That's
And
terrifying.
people, yeah, yeah. And people will go to the doc, well, they'll go to the emergency and they think, oh my gosh, I'm having a heart attack. And then to be told, well, you do have a little rhythm thing, but I think it's anxiety. So here, take Xanax, or maybe you're depressed. So that's where the drugs come in. Insomnia is huge. Migraines are huge. Seriously, the drugs given for migraines are they're like they could
Terrible.
kill a horse. Yeah, the side effects, but the pain is so horrible with migraines. But I mean, there are doctors who've written papers who say, magnesium deficiency is the cause of migraine. Do this before you do anything else. And a lot of this is just not listened to. It's unless it's drug based, somehow it just falls off. Anyway, so muscles, nerves, all the burning and tingling that people have in their feet, it can be like a diabetic type neuropathy. It can be excess sugar. The whole thing about sugar, there's a group of people now saying, oh, sugar's good, gives me a high, I feel good. Seriously, long term, not even long term, but you take sugar, this 10 teaspoons in your drink, and your body's only supposed to have 5 teaspoons. What happens? You got 15 teaspoons in there. Your insulin has to come out. It has to get rid of that sugar, throw it into the cells as quick as it can. So then you have a sugar drop. You have a hypoglycemic attack, maybe. You want to eat more sugar. And what happens at the cellular level? You get this, it becomes glucose then. So you put glucose into a cell, and the metabolism of glucose into the cell creates sorbitol, another type of sugar, in its breakdown process. Sorbitol is too big to get out of the cell, so it's in the cell killing everything in sight. So you've actually got this, cell death from sugar. The other thing about sugar that people don't realize is it's very close in chemical structure to ascorbic acid. Now, whether I know all about Halsey whole food vitamin C. I work with that, and I also work with ascorbic acid. I think they both have a place. So the chemical structure being almost equivalent of glucose and vitamin C means that when you take that hit of soda, you knock out your vitamin C for 5 or 6 hours. So your immune system tanks. So they compete, I should be more clear, they compete for absorption into the cell.
Yeah.
So when they're competing like that and the glucose gets in, the receptors are bound up, they're utilized by the glucose, and they don't allow vitamin C to get to the receptors or be absorbed into the cell to do their work.
Wow.
The thing that surprised me a lot about magnesium is when people start getting saturated, they're taking a couple teaspoons of my type of magnesium. After about 2 or 3 months, they start detoxing. I've got a rash. Oh, what's going on? I've got a coated tongue. My vaginitis is back. They're dumping yeast.
Mhm.
So it really taught me that magnesium is very important for detoxification. And it also reinforced my kind of belief system. A belief is a thought you've been thinking a long time. So I had this thought for a long time that you don't want to overwhelm the body with detoxification. I never start a person ever on, oh, we got to do a colon detox. Oh, we got to detox your liver. The liver harbors so many viruses, you don't want to release them. With the constipation, the intestines, you get their magnesium right, because the magnesium, its effect on the muscles in the body is that they no longer cramp up, they're not sort of rigid, the muscles in the intestines are working properly. It's called peristalsis, and you have normal bowel movements, but it's not a laxative bowel movement, it's just a normal function bowel movement. So there.
Wow, that's incredible. So, okay, so you mentioned your product, and I would like to ask you, using your product, what would be some like protocols that you would put people on? Do people start, right away with a higher dose? Are they safe with a higher dose? I know that magnesium is fairly safe in any form really to take, because if you take too much, your body can really kind of deal with it pretty easily. And especially
Yeah.
when we're talking about testing, and testing's a little bit difficult and can't really tell you that much. Maybe we don't even need the testing. We can just start taking the product. But I would love to hear your insight as to like where people should start with taking it.
Right. With the magnesium, and I'm not going to mention names. I mean, people can go to my website, but with the magnesium, we have to be careful as a dietary supplement company to not overwhelm people. So we actually just tell people to start with hydration, put your sea salt in, right away people actually start feeling better because they're hydrated and they have some minerals. And then we just start with a quarter teaspoon and say every couple of days add a quarter teaspoon and build up to 2 or 3 teaspoons in the beginning to get everything going. And then as time goes on, they can pull back. So we begin there, and then either concurrent or you can start it before. We do have a methylated food-based B vitamin with 2 sulfur amino acids, a precursor to glutathione, and taurine, which supports the heart. Boom, that's major detoxification plus nerve and adrenal support. The second set of minerals is a multiple, and that has 12 minerals. 9 of those minerals are necessary for thyroid hormone production. And this was seriously an amazing experience for me, because, doing the research, and I had realized all this, and here I am on 60 milligrams of Armour thyroid. So we were doing the test runs of this multiple mineral, and after 6 weeks, my hands were warm. My feet were warm.
Wow.
I started feeling actually a little hyper. So um, I don't recommend you do it this way, but I just stopped my Armor thyroid. It hadn't done that much to me in all those years, but most people should just wean off. So there were my minerals supporting my thyroid function. Now at the same time, the ReMag is supporting my adrenals. Sex hormones, thyroid, and adrenals, they're like a tripod. They work
That's right.
together. And when I hear practitioners, and see, the thing is, Casey, I come from a clinical background. Everything I do is based on me knowing how I feel on certain diets and foods, and me discussing with patients, them going on it, me getting the feedback. It's totally clinical oriented. It's not like, oh, read a research paper. Oh my gosh, I should tell everybody to take this. I don't do that type of experiment on people. Everything I do is based on clinical results. So clinically, we found out about the thyroid, and then I realized, oh, the adrenals are being supported by the B vitamins and the magnesium and vitamin C. So that was the next area, is to look at vitamin C and the importance of vitamin C for all the collagen in the body, the collagen in, lining your arteries, and the collagen in your ligaments, and the collagen, I think it's a protein that makes up the highest percentage in your body, collagen. And we don't even think about it, except, the bone broth people got into it. No, we got to take collagen. Well, you need vitamin C to make your own collagen.
That's right.
And that brings me back to building blocks. Why take glutathione, which is, it's rapidly metabolized in the liver. You really don't get much out of it unless it's a phosphatidyl product. But anyway, I give people the precursors to glutathione. And on your own time, when the body's ready for that priority, your body will start to detoxify, which is what I talked about with all of a sudden people are detoxing their yeast. Yeast is natural in the large intestines. It helps to eat up the undigested food and kind of get rid of it. Yeast and mold, those are living creatures that, if you didn't have mold and fungus in nature, all the dead trees will be still piled up, to the sky. You need fungus,
Right.
mold, and yeast to break down dead and rotting material. So when you think of people having yeast overgrowth, they've killed off their good bacteria with antibiotics. They've encouraged yeast overgrowth with a birth control pill and cortisol type hormones and stress and sugar. You
Yeah.
feed your yeast with sugar.
Yeah.
So the yeast they start marching up from the large intestine into the small intestine. They start poking holes. They lead to leaky gut, and those symptoms of leaky gut, which are caused by the 78 different yeast toxins that are formed during yeast metabolism, and they're absorbed into the bloodstream. And that's your brain fog, that's your joint problems, that's symptoms from head to foot. Every mucous membrane can be coated with a white coating. You have sinus problems, and what do you do for sinus problems? You take more antibiotics.
That's right.
Whereas what you could do is take a liquid picometer size stabilized silver product that I happen to have, and you squirt that in your nostrils, and voila, you no longer have a yeast sinusitis. Most sinusitis, I think it might have been the Mayo Clinic had a study that they pulled in a long time ago, but they said 97% of sinus infections are mold and fungus related.
Wow. Yeah, wow. Well, that is an amazing explanation. I do love the building block kind of approach. You've already mentioned intermittent fasting, and that's kind of what my mind goes to. Like intermittent fasting is such an amazing tool because you're kind of getting out of your way and you're letting your body do what it should do anyway and clean things up and with autophagy
Hmm.
and run, our
Hmm.
cells the correct way, which yeah, I look at those two things very similarly. Dr. Carolyn Dean, this has been an amazing conversation. It's so educational. I definitely learned a lot. And I'm really excited to try your product for sure. Can you tell our audience where that they can go to find you and connect with you and your work? And will you tell us a little bit about your company and where people can find that as well?
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, my educational site, which we have to separate it from the product side because the FDA doesn't want me telling people that nutrients can help their diseases. Only drugs can treat disease. So the educational site is drcarolyndean.com, drcarolyndean.com. And we've had to go a bit behind a firewall, Casey, because again, the FDA, seriously, they will not let me talk about my nutrients. And the product site is RnA ReSet.com. So I was resetting RNA a long time ago, RnA ReSet.com. And I have huge customer service people. Everybody in the company is on the product. They've all been in a situation where they felt hopeless and helpless, and they started the products and somehow ended up working in the company.
That's
It's
amazing.
amazing. It
What a
is
cool
amazing.
testimonial. What a cool testimonial. I absolutely love that. Awesome. Well, we will link those in the show notes. Dr. Carolyn Dean, thank you again so very much for having this
Hey,
conversation.
what are you calling me, Doc? Seriously, you should be calling me Carolyn. Did I let that
Carolyn.
happen for? Jeez.
uh, you've earned the title either way. But Carolyn, thank you so very much for everything you do. Thank you for your work and thank you for making time to come on our show today. We really appreciate you.
And thanks to you, I really appreciate it. And thank Bethany too.
I will for sure. Thank you. And this has been another episode of Balanced Body Radio.